Oh my gosh. So I woke up this morning. I really like Facebook. I just love this medium. This is like the best fucking medium ever. So anyway, sorry. But I woke up this morning with some really pleasant memories of parts of my childhood that was just like, oh wow. Remember my neighbors, the neighbors' kids, they would look over the fence and say, "Hey, what's up?" And we would look under the fence, or they would crawl up the fence and look down and be like, "Hey, what's up?" I remember going into the backyard and going into the way into the bushes, and it's like you're in the middle of a forest because when you're a small kid and you have a big backyard, because I think we were on a quarter of an acre, that these bushes were like its own forest, and that was a place of peace. I mean, it was way in the back, but it was just something that was really cool and it was nice. And so when you wake up with those kind of pleasant dreams, it's like not even a dream, it was just a thought. And so all these really cool memories are flooding back. Some are not so great, but I don't have any major trippy attachment to it. Like I don't have any bad feelings about stuff. It's just like, oh, it's just what we had to go through. And it yes, it makes up who you are, but it's just like it's not, it doesn't run you. And so when you're gonna write a book, here, this is the whole point of like what I'm talking about. Is if you're gonna write a book or tap into your potential, you have to face every single fucking demon. I don't care what it is. You have to face it. Whether it's publicly or privately, I mean, I don't know what you get out of privately. Yeah, you can go to a therapist, but there's something to be said to be that mirror, to be that for somebody else. That it's not just a selfish venture. Because then when you are the face of some extraordinarily amazing change, people see the journey you went through. They see what made up who you are. And it isn't always pretty. Believe me, you've seen the monster come out of me, okay? You've seen the vindictiveness, the monster. People were scared of me because they thought I was a homicidal maniac because I had the target practice behind my. And I'm sure I scared people, of course. But then I was also scared myself, okay? We're all scared people, afraid of other people's intentions. And when you rustle the nest, you just don't know what you're going to get. But when it all's said and done, really, not everybody has that potential to do that. I mean, some people do, yes, but you gotta see the full picture. You gotta see the full Monty, okay? And when you video diary your journey, because there's nothing to be ashamed about it. I mean, there's certain aspects where you're just like, geez, I'm not ready to talk about that yet, but it's a memory that's there, but you can still, you don't need to be salacious and be like, okay, here, I'm going to throw up and give you everything. No, because you don't want people feeding on that. But you want to see that there is a bright side to facing the demons. And I'm telling you, everybody's demons are different, okay? Everybody's demons are different. And so my demons, which are an amazing amount of them, are not going to be as much for somebody else who was like a trust fund kid, who had everything given to them. And so what is their stress? What they're going to do with their life, with the money they have, and to show that they are not just a trust fund kid, just living off of, mom and dad's estate when they pass away, as well as the grandparents. Okay, so I know trust fund kids have their own stresses, but they also have looming predisposed issues. They have other things that we will not be privy to because it's going to be under HIPAA, okay? And so everyone has their demons and things that they're going to have to deal with. But some people were giving gifts and they were able to get the gifts exposed to right out the gate. And so then they're amazing. But then maybe that isn't everything that they have the potential. They have more potential than just that specific gift. There's probably more gifts and potential and maximizing everything underneath all the layers and layers of programming based upon what someone wanted to get out of you. Okay, so anyway, so yeah, I was a teenage runaway. And I have people on my Facebook from my junior high class, okay, that know that they've watched me go through the runaway. I ran away to their house. I have my next door neighbor knew what was going on and had to turn me in to the authorities because I was living somewhere that I shouldn't be because I was underage. When you're underage, living in someone else's house that is sheltering you because you ran away, you have to go through the system. And that is a lot of why I went to landmark education, because no, I didn't graduate high school. I got my GED and went to the military. But I went through a lot of shit. Now you're seeing this monster come out, this shame, right? Come out, but not really, because if I'm gonna write this book that you guys are gonna get right now, within the next year or so, less than that, you guys see the bigger picture of where it all came from, so you know that I'm not just selling you a fucking dream. This is not some scam artist that wants to be your next guru. No, I don't want to turn into a Charles Manson with disciples and have a cult following. I want you guys to figure out your trauma and turn it into something amazing for not only yourself, but for humanity, and maybe give your kids a chance if that is an opportunity. And because everyone deserves to be free from their demons, be set free from cancer, disease, and chronic illness, potentially dying. And some people it's too late. Their demons are so working inside and have multiplied exponentially, and they're so aging that it will be torturous for them to deal with their past or demons or PTSD. Okay, so I was listening to some of the Helter Skelter, and I remember, like, when you're listening to stuff while you're trying to sleep, and so there's certain things that will just kind of like you won't hear because you're sleeping, and then something will wake you up. And what woke me up, during that transmission in the middle of the night was when the guy was explaining the reason why the hippie generation why they went to communes and why Charles Manson had a huge cult was because these were all the youth that ran away because their parents that came back from the war, post World War II, the parents were going through PTSD. They were alcoholics, drug addicts, and they were beating their kids. They were beating their wives. It wasn't always beautiful Beaver Cleaver and June Cleaver and the Andy Griffith Show. Okay, that was a cover. That's how we've seen the 1950s represented. It's like the Andy Griffith Show and Beaver Cleaver and June Cleaver and whatever Cleaver, but underneath all of that, there was a whole underbelly. There were people. There were kids being beaten. There was wives. And so then the 1960s was a place for then, of course, the rage and the war, and the love and the drugs and the sex and all this stuff. And then we're seeing history repeat. We have rage, war, and hate, and then we have love and drugs and let's forget what happened. And then you can't cover it up. People don't deal with their stuff. So then many people have to die because they're dying from the trauma of the war, the PTSD, their parents who were victims of the government because of the war, and then turn into alcoholics and drug addicts, sex addicts, and sexual deviants. We're seeing that now. We're seeing the hate and the rage now. We saw that in 1999 during the Woodstock 1999 and how the parents exploited the kids, and it's going to happen for a while, and we're going to see all that come up because of the frequencies and the viruses, and so that's why you're seeing then, of course, all the different shootings and people unraveling and family annihilators like Chris Watts. And so, yeah, so you got to see where all this J juice came from. It came from strategy, innovation. It came from hell. Okay? And do you have to go through hell to be strategic? Well, we're discovering now that if you can deal with your demons, whatever they are, you already have the gifts inside. Your parents gave you amazing gifts. Okay? They came from a long line of who knows what. And so you have to uncover those gifts, but it shouldn't be somebody else putting their hands on you. It shouldn't be experiments in science. It really should be you dealing with your predisposed issues and supporting it and not turning to the medical holistic industry that keeps covering up the trauma, that keeps actually adding even more trauma as they cover up trauma. When you have very root level trauma that it's kind of there, but you don't know where it's coming from. Like, I didn't know what the hell ran me. I didn't know why I felt so different than everybody else. And so when you keep going through more trauma of, marriages that don't work out, or boyfriends that don't work out, and rape and abuse and medical stuff and sickness, then all that first trauma that happened to you that spun every other trauma after that then gets disappeared, and now you're focusing on health issues. You're focusing on your last boyfriend. You're focusing on your boss that fucked you over, right? You're focusing on just the recent traumas, but you don't ever get to the root of the trauma. And that is very strategic. Is that planned? I don't know if it is. I can claim conspiracy and everything, but there's no point in doing that. And so you have to figure out now get away from the situations that will induce more trauma, which is the medical holistic system, okay, and start dealing with the root trauma. And that means uncovering some shit that it's like you don't want to deal with. And I understand that. But again, if you want to be any kind of influence in the J world and have books written where you show your path, you got to show people your face. Because let me tell you, anyone can write a story. There are many stories out there. I was given a story about being a Vietnam adoptee, and that's probably true. But that was also the reason that they could use that if the experiment didn't go right, which it didn't, because I fucking left the situation. Well, she's a Vietnamese adoptee and she was starving and she had trauma in the war. So that's why she's acting out. And that's why she's in these different schools. And that's why she's in juvie. And that's why she hasn't figured out her life and she's confused because she was a war baby. She was a starving orphan. And that was my story for many fucking years. And that was why I went to Landmark Education. Why I went there when I was so young. When I was with my roommates who were all international, because I was going to college and I went back home for a minute after being in San Jose, and my mom came to my apartment that was just thrashed. I just had garbage everywhere. And she's like, okay, I'm taking you home and we'll start over again. You can go to college. Well, I wasn't going to go to college. So I kept skipping college. And my mom, I guess, talked to my English teacher. Said she hasn't been in class. And so my mom goes, okay, time for you to leave the house because you're not going to college. She tried again to do the college thing. It didn't work. Man, I get it. And so then I moved into an apartment. Actually, it was in Lafayette, California. And then one of my roommates was actually in the military with me. And she said, hey, you should live with me. And I have roommates that are going to DBC, and they're all international, and so they're all older than me. And so then they also went through a program in San Francisco called Landmark Education. And so that's when I started dealing with certain aspects of my childhood. And then when they asked you, well, what's your issue? Why are you going to this program? I'm like, well, because I never graduated high school and I never was like everybody like in Silicon Valley. I wasn't going to Stanford. I wasn't going to UC Berkeley. I wasn't going to go to any of these high level schools. And I'm working at freaking Lucky's in Lafayette as a bagger in my 20s. And I just felt so ashamed that I wasn't like everybody else. And it was the most horrible feeling ever when you have been programmed for something else and you don't know why you're not measured up, but then the only story told you was that you're a Vietnamese adoptee from the war. Okay, well, fuck. So what kind of hope do I have if I have all of this shit right inside of me and here's my story that was given to me, okay? And then you don't know what runs you. That's the thing. We're all given stories about what goes on in the future, the past, whatever. Okay, does it really matter? Not really. What matters is what you're dealing with now, and that you have to uncover all of the root level trauma. And that means you have to stop adding more trauma to your fucking life. But people won't. Because when they want to run away from trauma, they add more trauma so they forget the other trauma. So they have the new trauma. And then that's how the scientists and the abusers out there then escape accountability, because the medical holistic system and the person's proclivity towards trauma is going to keep burying the trauma upon trauma upon trauma upon trauma. And then, and then here you go. Then people don't know the root cause of why people are who they are. And now I'm saying get away from the medical holistic system. Don't be a volunteer in the military. Get away from conscription, or you can't get away from that, but don't volunteer yourself in the military. Start now realizing that there's a whole lot more than all these government institutions that want to bring in guinea pigs. That you have the ability to develop a talent, to find your talents, to find your skills, to progress humanity away from the way they did shit in antiquity that they keep repeating over and over again via the Rosicrucians, okay? Via the deities. And so, I was a teenage runaway, and it saved my fucking life. Because if I didn't run away, then you see what happened. You'd have a Lyle or Menendez brothers that killed their parents. You have the Chris Watts situation. You have, which is, him killing his wife because he wanted something different. And maybe she was abusing him too. Okay? Or the Betty Broderick story, where she was so tied to her kids, she loved her kids so much, and wanted that life and couldn't have it, and she was being tortured intellectually and even with her kids and financially from her husband, and she had so much rage that she ended up doing what she had to do. She didn't have to do it, but that's when you don't walk away from a situation, it'll turn into something fucking horrible. And so when men and women walk away from their families, you got to say that that's the best thing that ever happened, because it could have turned into something horrible. People denigrate those people that walk away from their kids, walk away from their husbands or wives. Well, you don't know what's brewing inside. They could have had something in there that they felt the urge to hurt someone or hurt some because of the situation. And so instead of being in a situation and force themselves because of society, they walked away from it so it didn't turn into something bad. Okay? If the worst thing the kid has to get over is somebody not there for a minute, okay, better than having to deal with injuries or someone not being there because someone forced themselves to stay and endure a really horrific situation, whatever it is. Or they had something inside of them that they couldn't deal with and they didn't want to hurt anybody else around them because they weren't prepared for that. Okay? And so when people walk away from stuff or run away from stuff, not only are they protecting the people that they ran away from, but they're protecting themselves. And so there is no shame in being a teenage runaway, okay? Because I wasn't going to turn into a statistic. Not that I knew that then, but I had to get away and save myself and save them. Because, yeah, when you endure that much psychological shit and some physical shit, some people do turn into those homicidal maniacs, the serial killers. And so there is a survival mechanism in some people to not turn into that. And they are fighting those demons. Some people don't let their demons win and they turn into that. They're abusers, they're rapists, they're alcoholics or whatever. Okay? So since I really didn't have the capacity to be nepotized into a profession, I had to figure out the world I lived in. And so I told my boss in my 20s when I was a nanny, I will make something of myself, whatever it is. I will travel. I will drive across country, be by myself, and see where the wind takes me. And the wind took me in so many different directions. And I was running away from my own shit too. And adding more trauma on top of that. And then people are like, well, Jillian, you're so unstable. You're not keeping a job. You're not this. And so, yeah, I had the PMDD too and all of that. And so, I mean, when you have health issues and you're running away from yourself and you're adding more trauma to your life because of the situation you get into, then you forget where it all comes from. And then I'm still trying to have a relationship with my parent. And so you see the whole Stockholm syndrome. You see where all that shit, when Joseph Goebbels was or whoever was torturing his own experiments, and they called him father and mother, because like you still want that love, right? That fucked up love, because it was something you recognize. It was something that you depended upon, even though it was torturous and it was horrible. You still depended upon it. You still loved it. But then you're just like, okay. You're like, okay. Now it's a process. And so again, if I'm going to write this book that I'm writing now, I have to have a well-rounded way of dealing with stuff, so then I can actually be authentic in this book, and then it'll help uncover more shit in my next book. Okay? And I'm not going to be salacious. Just so you understand, this is not about being salacious and giving you the gory details so people can like feed upon that, and no. And people have asked me, well, what happened in your childhood? And I'm like, you don't need to go there. This is not something for you to be like getting titillated by. And so I just sidestepped that question. But it was a question that it was an inappropriate question. When someone asks you, well, what are the specific details? I'm not going to go into specific details. Okay? There'll be certain things that be like, yeah, it was pretty this, and I don't know, we'll see. Or certain punishments that were like avant-garde. But you can probably make the connections when someone is highly sexual. Who knows what was going on in the household when someone's highly sexual? Do I need to go into gritty details? No. Absolutely fucking not. There's enough stories out there, people got into gritty details, but there's so many different levels of that. And so I never got into porn. So that'll tell you it wasn't into that level. Okay? So when someone goes into porn, they were actually sexually abused on some level, or raped, or well, you can be raped, but do you go into porn? Not necessarily. You were groomed for that shit. When you go into porn, when you go into anything that is highly sexual, highly sexual, yeah, you were sexually abused. So I was groomed to be beautiful and have those characters come out, but it wasn't to that level, okay? So I want to dispense with all of those kind of rumors. And so now you see how our society has been built. It's built on trauma. It's built on the academia doing experiments, and then how you make money off of someone's trauma. How do you make money off of someone's persona, facade, archetype? And that also is how you develop a working society. You have different archetypes, and they're all programmed for different things. And we have men who just can't seem to keep it together and keep it in their pants. So then you have to create a porn industry, an outlet. And so then you have now many girls who have been abused like that. And now they are giving everything to these men who can't control themselves. And so it's a very strategically well-built society, but at the expense of the individuals. Okay. We got to know that's why people are who they are. Because believe me, a person who wasn't sexually abused would not go into the porn industry. There's no reason for them to go in the porn if they have other capabilities. But if they were groomed for that, why wouldn't they use their assets? Right? Okay. So the reason why the JJ world, to deal with the trauma from the past. Unlock the gifts that were taken from me because someone else wanted something else out of me. And so that, and I didn't even know that was the reason. It was just, oh God, I got skinny. Oh, yay. I've never did anything that got me skinny. But then it keeps uncovering past traumas. The whole JJ world, you'll go through the B cell memories. The memories come up, they get released. The memories come up, they get released. The memories, and then now you're like a whole new puppy. You're not programmed. The programming has disappeared. It's gone. You're not tortured by the memories. People are tortured by memories and they commit suicide. People get tortured by memories and they get into relationships that destroy them. People are tortured by memories and they get cancer, disease, and chronic illness and autoimmune disorders. And then they self-medicate and they keep compounding the trauma on top of trauma. And then they don't remember why the hell they're doing the drugs to begin with. Oh, because it feels good. It's healthy. I have a sickness. Where do you think the lupus came from? Where do you think the fibromyalgia came from? Where do you think your cancer came from? It came from trauma. But you don't know the root cause of it because you've added so much trauma since the beginning. You don't know where it originated. And it could be a predisposed issue that your parents gave you. It could be your parents' divorce. So the reason why the JJ world, to deal with trauma from the past. And so to unlock the gifts that were taken from you because someone else wanted something out of you. And realize the medical holistic system compounds your issues and also makes you try to forget the trauma, but the monster does not, but the monster does destroy you from the inside. People are physically and mentally self-imploding daily. Okay? The medical holistic system helps the monster destroy you before you destroy the system because of all that trauma that you underwent, and the world because of your unmanageable issues. Okay? And that's kind of like, shit, well, that's good and that's bad. So, but it sucks. Why even go there? Well, when you're so busy getting over your childhood, and I'm 49. I'll be 49 February 5th. And I still feel like I'm 20. I feel like I even look at myself, I'm like, I look fucking 20. I still feel like I'm 20, 15 when everything went to hell. I still feel like I'm 15. Do I look 15? I feel like I'm 15. So the medical holistic system helps the monster destroy you before you destroy the system. So when you're busy getting over your childhood, battling a disease, you don't think about the future, especially when your growth has been stunted by trauma. Let me tell you, when kids go to war, they will be stunted by the trauma of war. So you're too busy raising your children while you're in runaway status. That will repeat the same trauma and mistakes and then give your children to science for them to be another hard luck case later on if they survive their adulthood or childhood. And that's what parents do because they have no idea what else to do. This is the system, this is the situation we're being given. We hope that our kids survive and be successful, and some do, and some don't. But, you know, when you see someone that was successful in their situation, and then, you know, you don't know what's lurking in that kid's situation, you know, that's a false promise that they're going to be successful. You don't know. So what's the best way? Preempt everything now. So get all that shit out now. So that way, when they do go into a profession, they have all the tools and the potential available to them. They're not going to be taken down by a disease in like 5 years. And then they can be whatever they want, and they can change, and they can be innovative, and they can actually add something to the profession. But people don't think that way. They're like, okay, well, you're 18 and I'm tired of dealing with your shit. You're at the door. Go figure it out. And then they go down the hill but that's okay. Sometimes you just don't. But see, moms and dads have to deal with their own trauma first. And if they don't deal with their own trauma first, their kids will have a predictable life, and it'll be shorter because the atmosphere is crazier. So many scientists expect their specimens and cultures to pass away before it realizes what happened. And it does happen. The cultures they experiment upon do not survive their own life. And that's why there's a lot of suicide, homicide, people in jail. Okay? But some fight their way through it. Some had the spark of life within them to leave once situations got so bad it didn't turn into something you would see on the news. So just think of the Menendez brothers, the Betty Broderick case, okay? And let me tell you, I remember in my 20s where I'd pick up scissors and then put them down because there was a weird urge. I'm like, why am I feeling this weird? Why am I forcing myself to put down the scissors? And I wasn't in any bad situation. I haven't had that urge at all where I pick up scissors or pick up anything and feel the urge to put it down. I purged that shit. But let me tell you, there was a demon inside of me that wanted to turn me into something. There was a demon inside of me that wanted to turn me into something. That's how I kind of understand where Charles Manson's coming from. Because when you go through so much trauma, there is something that wants to have that release, whatever it is. And if you don't release it in a way that is constructive, and it could be self-destruction. Some people will self-destruct before they destroy somebody else. That's where you have to understand how this shit works. If you don't resolve the trauma, you will either destroy somebody else or you will destroy yourself. And I was destroying myself for many years. I was not going to destroy anybody else. Was not. That's why I put the scissors down when I felt the weirdest fucking urge. Okay? And that was in my 20s. And I remember that to this day. And I'm like, that's fucking crazy. But then you see what people go through when they have gone through so much shit and then they turn into these serial killers. It is a release. It has to be. Why else would they do it? Nobody would go and kill somebody or hurt somebody or even themselves if they hadn't gone through some shit. Okay? And now you look at the world around you and my God, everybody has gone through some fucking... And that's why it's so scary nowadays. Because you don't know who you're getting together with. You don't know what is lurking in their background. You don't know what kind of trauma they've been through. And people hide shit well. They pretend they haven't because, you know, if they had known your childhood, they'd be like, I wish I get with you. And people would be right. They'd be correct. They should be scared. Nowadays, maybe a couple of years ago, it wasn't so bad because of frequencies. But now things are like, oh, shit. Okay, so when you're fighting the urge, when you have to put scissors down and you're fighting some weird urge, you need to now do the J juice and get that demon out of you because that is something brewing under the surface. Okay? And so, no, I'm not a homicidal maniac, but I'm definitely a product of my environment. And again, I've done so much of facing these demons that all of that trauma has been down the toilet. All of that shit's down the toilet. It's out there on Facebook now. You all can do something with it. Some of you probably understand where I'm coming from, but you would never tell anybody that because they would think you're crazy. And you wouldn't have the platform to do it because how would you explain that? How would you fucking explain that? You can't. All right? So you keep it to yourself, and as well as you should, you keep it to yourself. Until you purge out those demons, you don't see anything about anything that is like a weird feeling that people be like, whoa, yeah, you don't. But let me tell you, you look into my eyes. Look at what I've been doing. Okay? So people don't kill or run away from something that is protecting them and taking care of them and fostering the best out of them. But does a peaceful life foster innovation? Not necessarily. But how do you get innovation out of something that doesn't want to hurt, that doesn't want to hurt? They have to deal with their own issues. So how do you get innovation out of something that you don't want to hurt? Okay? If I want to get innovation out of my kid, I don't want to hurt them. I don't want to hit them. But the people hit their kids because the kids have hormonal imbalances. Well, instead of hitting the kid to try to get them to react or to get them to stay in line, why don't you purge the demons that are causing them to be way out of line? And maybe some kids have to deal with expressing their demons. And so they have to go and yell and scream. But then you also have to help get that out and tell them that when they're sick, they got to purge out those demons called blowing your nose, drinking milk so they can poop, and don't give them Imodium AD so they stop the diarrhea. You know, when you have enough electrolytes in your body, the diarrhea isn't going to cause, dehydration. No, you have to make sure that the body has an adequate release process, or those demons take control. Those demons will take control. So I can see why people turn into murderous, homicidal maniacs. But on the other side of it, someone who's never dealt with trauma or stress, really, relative to your situation, if it was more extreme, they will be the tool of the system to represent what is normal and the thing to do. And they will have their own hell looming in front of them as far as their predisposed issues. But in the meantime, they will keep with the agenda. So they become couriers for the dream. I see it all over my Facebook from my high school class. I mean, I can see that they were given everything, they were given everything to them. So now they're in cancer. They're in taking money from people to build up cancer research. They're into foundations. What do you call it? Funding foundations for research. And so they put up benefits. They ask donations from all the different places. They ask you for donations. Here, donate to pancreatic research. Donate to cancer research. Donate to lymphoma, leukemia, lupus, breast cancer. And so then they become couriers for the dream. And in the meantime, they're destroying their friends and family. But you couldn't tell them that, right? They don't understand how that shit works. So relative to your situation is more extreme. So they will be the tool of the system to represent what is normal and the thing to do. And so they become couriers for the dream. They are the beautiful people until their body breaks down. They have their trust funds and mom and dad supporting them. And so to make them feel like they're giving back, they're developing foundations already embedded into the system for cancer research and other types of do-goods institutions that destroy the population even more. But they don't know it. And so they have no reason to change. If you're making money off of the people, why would you give that up? If it was one like, oh, they're bound down to you because you're collecting money for cancer research or want to donate to your GoFundMe account for cancer research, you think they're going to fucking change? No, they're run by money. Greed, 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 greed. Oh, on top of that, with the story of how good it is. See, so you can build a story for something good, even though it's something bad, and you can build a story of something bad, and that, that or something, well, yeah, that's bad, and then you're like, okay, and so many stories can be built on top of situations to lead someone down a path or distract them from the root cause or whatever. And so you don't know the true story behind anything, except you look at it's about money. When it's about money, you really have to watch the fuck out. Anytime someone wants money from you or wants to give you money, now you have to have your radar up. And you're like, what do they want? What are they doing? I mean, when you think about it, eating food, driving a car, a basic car, whatever, breathing the air, shelter, that's the only money I'm willing to part with. As far as cancer research and medical shit, fuck no. As far as cheap Chinese goods that are sold as Fendi bags and baubles and people's whatever, or their herbs, oh hell no, well, that's the same thing as medical stuff. But none of that MLM shit. None of that LuLaRoe. I bought so much LuLaRoe. I have given so much money to help my friend out, and then that's a whole story in itself. I'm not doing any more of that buying into people's fucking stupid shit. Okay? Done with all the MLMs and done with all the little salesmen, the couriers for the dream, because they're even breaking down. So not everybody goes through the same trauma. Other people suffer the first wife syndrome and their mate dropped them for various reasons. Some people suffer obesity through completely underweight, or self-obsessed with beauty and culture. They have their plastic surgeon on speed dial. Okay, some of you have gone through some shit and you're mixing in with some rough crowd and they're talking smack and you're kind of in the drama. That's a suffering and trauma in of itself. Okay. We have siblings who are jealous of each other, who will find every way to undermine each other, but they come off like it's happy, happy, joy, joy. Not everything is what it seems. And Facebook is very deceptive, especially with those who only put out their pretty pictures and the platitudes and all the love, love, love. And you know there's so much suffering inside, especially when you have to put on a front, because we know everybody has some sort of trauma. But why should we express it on Facebook? They don't. But we have many people fooled by people's facades, and they don't realize who they're dealing with until it's too late, when the monster gets expressed. So then where did all this come from? Okay, definitely history repeats itself. And like I said, when anything that we can remember from our history books, because anything before the 1930s and 1940s was like, okay, the time of, I don't know, well, the 1800s, 1700s, then you get into the Middle Ages, right? The 1800s, 1700s, Middle Ages. Before that, before modernity, it was antiquity. Okay, and so we keep repeating history. And so when you have wars and you have PTSD and trauma, and alcohol has been around, drugs have been around forever, and then you have offspring that get mutated from that because, people can't deal with their trauma. And so, of course, they go into violence, they go into rage, they go into vindictive evil shit because they're breaking down. They can't handle the trauma. It's not being released. It's being expressed through violence. And so each generation has to go and recover from the trauma of their parents or their grandparents or their great-grandparents. And it keeps going down the line. And then you have the rise and fall situations. So much trauma, a whole civilization just gets wiped out. Not enough trauma. You have so many people, and then they all replicate, and then then they eat all the resources, and then they go into violence. And that's the Universe 25. When you have that experiment. I forget the other name of it. With Universe 25, or the 3,000 rats that were given a utopian life, and they all cannibalized each other. They all eventually went into violence because they were breaking down, and they total extinction, cannibalized each other. Well, now we're kind of in that same situation. We had a utopian life, relative utopian life, right? Now the economy is becoming harder. The frequencies are more aggressive. The weather is pretty crazy. And so now people's trauma and their monsters are rearing their ugly heads, and people are self-imploding. Or they're getting cancer, disease, and chronic illness. So, here we go. So where does this all come from? Definitely history has repeated itself thousands and thousands of years once they realized how to use trauma and fear to guide populations. Those who were the victims of war, government, PTSD, their children will have a hell of a time. Post-World War II, the 1950s was not chalked up to be what was sold as it was. It wasn't beaver cleaver and everything beautiful. The men who came back from the war suffered PTSD, alcoholism. They beat their kids, they beat their wives. The children that came out of that turned into hippies. They ran away, developed their own commune. That was why Charles Manson was so huge, unpopular, because he represented those kids that were being beaten by their parents who came back from war, from PTSD, from alcoholism, okay? So it was rage, war, 1930s, hate, love, 1960s, rage, war, love, drugs, rage, war, hate, 2000, NWO. And we're in that right now. We're in the rage and the hate and the homicidal maniacs, suicidal maniacs. People's demons are coming to surface. We kicked it off in 2016 with the J Juice. We kicked off everyone's trauma in 2016. That's why there was a war going on. And that's why Dr. Phil capitalized on that war. Everyone was demonizing salt, sugar, food. They didn't want to feel their trauma. They want to deal with it, but they had to. Because let me tell you, some people who did the JGs back then probably were saved because their heart attacks and strokes they would have gotten in 2019, 2020 would have kicked their ass and killed them. So the fact that they survived their predisposed issues before 2019, before COVID, yeah, you started a war, but you survived it. Now, are people maintaining the war and dying from it now? Who knows? People aren't, who knows? So we kicked that off. And so we're in the rage. We're in a hell of a time right now. So anyone that's run away from something, that's feeding it and sheltering it, you know they're going through some shit. Kids don't run away unless there's something going on with the home. And you can say, oh, the kid's demented and defected. Yeah, it's the parents' fucking fault. Okay? The parents are responsible for that child. Parents don't want to take responsibility. Well, I didn't do anything that was horrible. It could be your neglect. It could be the fact you're feeding them, antibiotics. It could be the fact you're taking them to the hospital all the time. And so now they have more trauma and they're acting out and they don't know where the hell it comes from. Okay? And so people that run away could run away from parents who are always giving them to the medical system. So no more running away, everybody. Some will get lost in their addictions and distractions, their associations and the groups mean more to them than their own survival. So some people will not face their own trauma. They will not say anything at all to themselves, to Facebook, to anything, or even to their wives or husbands, because they're in a tight-knit group. If they say anything that may have been a mistake of their parents who may be attached to it, it would upset their whole world. And so it means more to them to die in their group than it is to survive. And I get it. It's hard out there on your own. Believe me, I've been out there on the streets on my own, sleeping underneath mattresses. All right? For a minute until I found my way back to wherever. Okay, so I understand the loneliness of being alone. I understand why you would destroy yourself so you don't have to deal with being alone. And that's sad that people will destroy themselves so they don't feel alone. I mean, and so some will face their own personal hell and trauma. And it's let me tell you, it is so hard to face your personal hell. It's so hard. And I've been doing it for years. And then I added more trauma with the Dr. Phil shit, but that's okay. I dealt with that. And so some of you have been told stories and you don't even know what's true anymore, even from your own parents. Many things in the government and where we're going and where we've been told many stories, and we don't know what's true. We don't. But does it really matter? What matters is what you're dealing with right now and what's available in front of you, and can you survive it? The memories are what's holding you back and blocking your maximum potential. So if you're going to write a book or go to college or go into a specific profession, you want to have every single opportunity and potential available and afforded to you within your own brain, body, mind, and spirit. And so before you go into a college or go into a profession, figure out how to purge all of those crazy B-cell memory antibodies that are stuck in your colon that will eventually rear its ugly head. And it could be cancer, disease, and chronic illness, or it could be a crazy traumatic memory that you didn't know existed and it came out one day because of the frequencies, and now you are being tortured by those memories. Okay? And so some of you have been given the path to a career, and you have gifts that it's being fostered by your parents. But you could see, even in some of these gifted kids' faces, they have so much acne on their face. So much acne. What is all that? That's antibodies. That's so much innovation in their body that's causing, and it's showing that there is shit going on their insides. When you have so much acne on the face, you have antibodies attacking your organs in your body. And so right now you're a child and you're showing everybody that you can play the music and do this and do that. That acne is a precursor to something lurking inside. And if you don't purge that and then feed your body to repair yourself, if you don't purge that, that demon is going to come rear its ugly head, and it's going to shorten your potential and your lifespan. And that's why I say get away from the medical holistic system that's going to compound the trauma. All the different therapies, I don't care what they are, compounds the trauma and adds more trauma. And that then it's harder for you to get out from behind the eight ball because you have been compounding that trauma with medical, holistic, and bad situations and alcohol and drugs and addictions. And oh my God, the freaking list is endless. And then you get lost in trauma, and then all you're doing is reacting and adding more trauma. All you do is reacting and adding more trauma. And that's pretty strategic when you want your culture, your experiment to forget why they are suffering. You just add more trauma, add more therapy, add more medical holistic shit, add more surgery. Trauma is a business. Suffering is a fucking business. And it is all part of science. Scientists have done some great, amazing things as far as innovation, but at the expense of what? A lot of different people. And the ones that are acting out are telling you, that's science. The ones that get cancer, disease, and chronic illness, that's science. That's science developing that situation. Just because you can't make correlation equals causation right at that moment, you know that that person's belief system in the medical holistic industry has caused them to have cancer, disease, chronic illness, and the aging process and suffering from PTSD and everything else under the fucking sun. But can you tell someone that who's so afraid? When you're using fear as a way to control someone, oh God, you're near a virus, you might die. Well, yeah, that's true. But if you armed yourself properly with food and rest and facing your demons and all the trauma you ever underwent, you can be around a virus and you don't have to take any fucking therapy for it. But can you tell someone that? No, when they've already had that in their genetic line and they're making money off of other people's trauma and saving them, right? Anyone that has love in their name and talks about love all the time, or deems themselves a savior and want to give you stuff or want to save you and protect you from whatever, and they're a fucking stranger, run the fuck away. When strangers want to protect you, run away. You protect yourself. When you're dependent upon a stranger to protect your kid, a stranger to protect your family, if you don't protect yourself and protect your family, ain't no one gonna fucking do it. And don't depend upon a stranger who has dollar signs in their eyes, okay? But you can't tell someone who is under so much trauma. When someone's been traumatized their whole life, you see the spaciness. You see the naivete. Okay? I've met some such naive people. You're just like, I'm amazed you even got this far, but they've never left their town. They've never been on an airplane. First time when they're 30 years old. And they go to Florida. You're like, wow, she's never been out of her town. And you're like, oh my God. And they've gone through their own trauma. They're going through their own trauma. Tortured by boyfriends and anxiety and predisposed issues. And when you have anxiety and predisposed issues, you invite trauma into your world. When kids have hormonal imbalances, they invite trauma into their world. Because when you have a parent who hasn't dealt with their trauma, guess what they're going to do? They're going to inflict trauma onto their kid. They're going to take their kid to the medical holistic system 24/7, and then trauma upon trauma upon trauma. It's not funny, but I have to laugh. So if you're going to write a book, go to college, or go into a specific profession, you want to have every single opportunity and potential available and afforded to you within your own brain, body, mind, and spirit, without taking drugs or taking therapies or using somebody else to get you, or stepping on somebody else, okay? So college and whatever training you get out there only scratches the surface of your kind of potential, okay? So let me tell you, going to college and the gift that you may have that your parents are fostering, that's very small in what is available. If you're only living to be 100 years old or less, you haven't even known the world. People don't mature really, if they even are allowed to mature. I mean, even see the glimpse of maturity until they're probably 80 or 90 and they're dead. That's how fucked up our system is you're not allowed to mature because of all the therapies. You're so afraid to feel the evolution of the pain of the viruses and feeling the pain of the food. Because yeah, when you're drinking milk, I drank milk last night. I wanted to see if I was going to have like any diarrhea or anything. No, I drank milk right before I went to bed. I had a few farts. I'm like, maybe I'll drink milk before I go to bed every night. And that's my new routine. I have, some milk. I'm going to drink milk every day. Yeah, I had a few loogies, but had a few loogies last night, but they weren't like, red and green. But this morning when I was purging out some stuff, I had Christmas colors in some of my loogie stuff. Okay, so there's still a little bit of infection inside, but it's not running me. But when my body's releasing in the morning and all the poop's coming out, and then I'm blowing out the stuff up here, if I didn't blow that stuff out, those are all antibodies from protection and any other types of waste material. And if I didn't blow that out, it would turn into cancer. It would turn into a disease that then would warrant another therapy. It would warrant another surgery. And so you see how, again, trauma induces, and therapy and a solution. So some people don't know their potential because they have been geared towards a profession because someone wanted to use their resources for something specific. And there is no guarantee you'll be successful when you're taking the genetics you have right now and using them, okay? Because you don't know where disease lurks. And then when you do get a disease, then what do? You go and try to stop the evolution. That's stopping the innovation. That could have been the next idea in your industry. When you're taking a vector or any kind of therapy to stop the COVID evolution, all that stuff, and you're relatively young, and if you're old, okay, but when you're old or dying or whatever, the vector's not gonna make a fucking difference. But when you're young and you're trying to stop evolution, you stop being sick, you are killing off your innovation. You're destroying your evolution, innovation, and potential. And that's why the medical holistic system is they stunt everybody's growth and potential. And so you run away from them, and everyone that is selling you something or trying to protect you. That's why the student loan industry is so huge, because every single kid out there who thought they had something was sold a dream. And then when they get out there to the workforce, they're doing retail. Only a few people can be nepotized into their situation. And mommy, daddy, basically giving them everything. And so, yeah, they'll be great. They'll be a great insurance agent. They'll be a great this, a great that, whatever. Because they've been groomed for it. When you're groomed for something, you'll be great until your body breaks down or you fall into your diseases or addictions or whatever. And so some make it to a certain point and some don't. If you were groomed for whatever position you haven't made, you have it made. But if you weren't, do you have what it takes to start from the ground up? And many don't. So now it's time to unlock the potential, but you have to go through the pain and find out your gifts. Some of you have a treasure trove of gifts within you, but it was held back by the medical holistic industry, antibiotics and surgery, and all the therapies. And so none of the therapies are poison per se, okay? What is poison? Poison is something that's not FDA approved for consumption, okay? That's what poison is. Anything that's FDA approved, it's not poison, but it will stunt your potential. It'll pave the way for disease down the road, if not already, if you can prove that correlation equals causation, and some can, and some cannot. That's why it's crazy out there with the anti-whatever worlds, because some people can prove that, yes, the therapies caused their issue to come to surface, and if you weren't trained on how to deal with it, then yeah, you would have a case. Right now, everyone in the JJ world who's been following me for a while knows how to respond to disease. You feed it, you rest, you get the poop out, you blow your nose, you don't do so many waterfalls, you don't take any remedies for it, you rest, you eat, you blow your nose, you get the poop out, and you take it easy. And you don't try to prematurely get back into the game, because you still have to finish that evolutionary process. You stop it right in the middle, you get stunted. Okay? And that's what happened to me. I got stunted. And then when shit went freaking crazy, it was when I was 15 years old. That's when I said, fuck this. I'm out of here. I'm not going to. And I never thought about hurting my parents at all. Absolutely not. But I had to get the hell out of there. I wasn't going to survive it. There was no fucking way. I would go crazy. I would go fucking crazy if I stayed. And so then I thought it was my fault, because and that's where the self-hate came from, because they made it sound like, well, you're a war baby. You have issues. You weren't behaving yourself. Well, why wasn't I behaving myself? Oh, because I have issues, because I'm a bad girl. I'm a bad person. And so even parents can make it seem like it's your fault. And then that's how they turn the tables. So they take responsibility off themselves. And you know that happens. You know that happens. That is the protection of the scientist. That's the scientist protecting their research. I understand it. I mean, I don't like it. I mean, at the expense of me hating myself, me self-imploding, me self-hatred and self-destruction. But that's what scientists do. They create a storyline to protect the research, to protect their industry. Okay? That's how science works. If you're going to get innovation out of the population, yeah, there's going to be a lot of casualties. A lot. Is that good or bad? Well, we've been given the Freedom of Information Act. We've been told here's the side effects. Here's this, and this. If you still want to do and participate in these experiments, okay, you've given your permission. Well, when I was a kid, I wasn't given the permission. See, when you're a kid and you're being experimented upon, you weren't given permission. You were just psychologically manipulated. And that also happens out there, okay? There are kids that have been manipulated and psychologically experimented upon. Okay. But better than dying in Vietnam, right? I mean, it was during the war. It was 1975, so you can't really argue with that story. It was during the war. So better, I guess, to be part of science than die in a war. So when you think about what could have been, I guess, my childhood and all that shit, whatever, is not as bad as what it could have been. But it's still pretty devastating. And okay, but that's where you wrestle, where you still love your mom and you still respect her, and she's fucking smart. My mom is smart. Evil like me can be evil like, because I mean, when someone tries to cross you and you've been through some shit, you will take down the house. Okay, that's what evil is when you have unresolved issues, that if someone crosses you, and then it won't matter. Nothing will matter except for something that's mission oriented. That's why people have to be very careful, because you don't know who you're going to cross when you get into relationships with people. And they could be mission oriented. You don't want to trigger that shit. And so you hope for the best for them, but you can't get involved in all of their shit that's going on. We have a lot of people who are suffering so much. And so that's where the whole serial killer is mission oriented, or they're into thrill seeking and other stuff. And you saw what I went through on that. Okay? And so you can see some people are fighting the demons. And some people let the demons win, and they end up destroying themselves, and they destroy society. And then the medical holistic system, though they say, okay, we're trying to protect you, they're trying to keep that demon under wraps and have it self-implode before it destroys society. And so the JJ world is going to bring up your demons. And you better have an idea of what those demons are, so you know what you're in for, and so your family and your friends know what they're in for if you're still connected to a bunch of people. But if you're relatively on your own and you have a few people that know what's going on in your world, and that way if you can't walk, well, that's the thing, if let's say you wake up one morning, you can't walk, you can't talk, you can't hear. Well, that's difficult. And you're by yourself. What do you have? What do you have as a backup in case that happens? If you can't walk and you can't talk, well, you can go on Facebook. If you can't move, well, that would be difficult. You should be able to move. If you can't walk, now your body will find a way to survive. If you can't walk, then you can talk. I doubt the body will totally go to that point where you can't walk, you can't talk, you can't hear, you can't see, you can't speak. One of the senses must be, if you can only hear, then that would be kind of crazy. So I don't know. But just look at your parents' predisposed issues, look at some of the really crazy autoimmune disorders like vasculitis, and look at all the research, because that's the worst case scenario, is what Ashton Kutcher went through. If you have any kind of predisposed issues, you'll have at least one sense. Hopefully, it's a sense where you can type or you can speak on the phone. Okay, so that way, if you have an issue with getting out of bed or have an issue with something, you can call somebody, be like, "Hey, can you do this for me?" Or I don't know. You'll figure that out. Everybody has their own issue, but when you bring up your predisposed issues, it's hard to say what'll come up. But when you deal with it and you face it, and you use food and you use rest and you blow your nose and you get the poop out, understand your alimentary canal and open it up so everything can be released, so you're not being tortured by the demons, and then compounding the issue with more therapies, I'll tell you, you will be able to then see the potential that you hold, that you're not locked into some very, I don't know, into somebody else's expectations, that you release the program and you set yourself free without dying. Okay? And so anyone that ever went to school with me, whether it's in grade school all the way up to junior high, and when I went to junior high, that's when shit fell apart, and that's when I left. I went to maybe 3 different high schools, 2 different high schools. No, 3 different, because I went to the Foundry, Monte Vista, and Acalanes. Those are all in the Bay Area. The Foundry was the reform type of school. It was for all the troubled youth. And so it was for gangbangers and people who couldn't make it in the high school. And so my parents put me in that program. It was out of San Jose, California. And so there's a lot of, I was hanging out with a bunch of gangbangers. I was in foster homes too, in foster homes too at that time, and a ward of the court. I met a lot of Norteños, Sureños, the Crips, the Bloods. Oh, and when you see that side of society in the world, you're like, whoa, there's a whole different world than the upper middle class Saratoga. So, but they also, I went and hiked Mount Whitney through the Foundry. And back when I was 17, 18, 19. Okay? And so I hiked Mount Whitney, kayaked in the bay, San Francisco Bay. Also went to, we did like the ropes course, all those confidence building skills for people who couldn't make it. And why couldn't we make it? I didn't know everybody's stories. I know a lot of people were in the gangs. San Jose was a huge place for gangs. East San Jose, South San Jose, cruising. Oh, God, the 90s were just something. See, these are the memories, and they're pretty interesting memories. I mean, it's kind of cool to remember this shit, but when your mind is clear, I haven't remembered this shit in such a long time. It was fun, but it was a lot of life experience. And you meet some crazy, I met criminals. So I'm saying, there's some pretty smart people out there. Really smart people. They're in the criminal system. Really smart people out there who is not criminals. Okay? And so that gives you a well-rounded point of view of the world that you live in and what people are dealing with. And that how the system does cover up all the experiments in the medical holistic system. And some of these kids are in the foster system, in the juvenile system, in the prison system. They have been experiments from the medical holistic system. And they don't know why they're acting out. They don't know why they went into what they did. They don't know why, because there was more trauma compounding. And so, yeah, when you're giving your kids antibiotics and all the different therapies, I don't care what it is, you're developing a monster. And that's the whole point of the J-Juice, is that we now release the monster that's running us. And we're not afraid to expose the beast. And that's why I want you guys to start facing your fucking demons in the JJ world. If you want to influence anyone. If you want to stay in the background, that's fine. Face your own demons in your own way. But I will not be promoting anyone on a platform on my JJ, promoting any book, unless people see your eyes. And they see your face. And they see your journey. And they know who you are, what you've been through. Because now, we can't be ashamed. But if we are ashamed, then it's because we're locked into the image of our politics, religion, and science, and jobs, and under the spell of the people that we're involved with. And okay, that's fine. That's your life. I hope that you're able to face your demons while still being attached to a lot of different influences. I hope you face your demons, and I hope you can live indefinitely. Okay? And so that was the whole point of JJ, is to live indefinitely and not die from natural causes, Of course, you can't stop, a plane falling out of the sky, landing on your house, and you die from that, okay? But as far as dying from natural causes, that won't even be in the future if you can face your demons. But I don't want anybody selling a hard luck story. I want you to use that as your foundation, and that you purged all that. And yes, JJ kind of helped you be a catalyst, but then remember, you can only do so much J juice. J juice is just a small little tiny window. J juice just brings it up and forces you to deal with stuff. That's it. That's all J juice is. That's nothing else. If you use it as a cure, then you're back in the medical holistic system. So that's not even where I'm going. J juice is just a catalyst. It starts the war inside that you're now armed to win. Before, you were not armed to win because you kept giving yourself to the medical holistic system, and they're armed to win. The cards were stacked against you as soon as you put your kid in the medical holistic system. The house always wins. Who's the house? The hospital system. When you put yourself in the hospital system, when you go to a casino, the cards have been stacked against you for fucking years, and you never knew it, but you were reacting from it, and you compounded the issue. Well, now it's time to expose the beast and free yourself without dying. Good luck, everybody. Bye.